Hello everyone, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 28th April 2024 and we have a few important news articles for today's discussion. So we'll try and understand what are those important news articles and what is their relevance and why were given in the Hindu newspaper today. So we have a series of articles ranging from India Women Trade Pact that will be unveiled in near future, and after that we will also understand about the forest fires in Uttarakhand and what are the major causes of forest fires in Uttarakhand and how we can prevent the forest fires also, and what are the provisions with respect to election of a candidate unopposed, or if no nominations were filed in any constituency except one single nomination, and that candidate would be declared elected by the returning officer of that particular constituency. And we will also understand how Nagaland is going to conduct local body polls with 33% of the seats which are being reserved for the women. So we will discuss all of those important articles. Now before that, we'll try to answer the question that was given yesterday. So the question was, Global Forest Watch is an initiative of which of the following institutions? So here we have four different options. Option A is Food and Agriculture Organization, option B World Meteorological Organization, option C United Nations Environment Program, and option D World Resources Institute. So the correct answer for this question is option D, because World Resources Institute actually publishes the Global Forest Watch. So please understand, these questions are very important because in UPSC there was a trend of asking reports and the institutes which have been publishing those reports. So therefore understand, the Global Forest Watch is released by World Resources Institute. And we'll briefly understand about the Global Forest Watch and World Resources Institute also. So this particular organization established Global Forest Watch in 1997. Remember, the Global Forest Watch is established by the World Resources Institute in 1997, and it is actually an online platform that offers data and tools to monitor the forests across the world. And in fact, this Global Forest Watch actually provides access to the near real-time information on forests across the globe and the changes that have been taking place in those forests, and that will help us track and analyze the forest dynamics across the world. So forest dynamics actually in the sense that what are the factors that have been contributing for the degradation of forest or deforestation of forest. Now what are the areas where we have seen increased forest cover? Everything can be understood in a detailed manner from the data which is being provided by the Global Forest Watch. Now today also we have one important practice question. The question is, which of the following statements about the Miyawaki method is true? So Miyawaki method is a different method of forestation. Now we have four different options. So it is a traditional farming technique used in Japan for centuries. Option B, it is a method used for rapid forestation by planting a mixture of native plant species closely together. And option C says it primarily focuses on the use of chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides. And option D, it is designed to grow only one type of plant to ensure uniformity. So please try to answer this question in the comment section, and I'll be providing you the correct answer in tomorrow's lecture. Now let's one by one discuss all important news articles. The first and foremost article that we are going to start this discussion today is with the wildfires or forest fires that have been taking place in Uttarakhand, especially Nainital. Now what was the context of this particular article? So the context is that the forest fire is building up in the vicinity of an Air Force base or Air Force station in Nainital, Uttarakhand. And since forest fires were become so rampant and forest fires are also rapidly increasing near the Air Force station in Nainital, the Indian Air Force actually activated a serial firefighting capability employing Mi-17 and V-5 helicopters for undertaking Bambi bucket operations. So on this image you can see, so this is how the Indian Air Force has actually started a firefighting activity against these forest fires. Now, if you look at the vulnerability map of India to forest fires, in fact, the forests in Northeast India and Uttarakhand and in Central India, so they're mostly vulnerable for these forest fires. And in fact, during summers, the intensity of these forest fires would further increase rapidly. So that is one such factor which has been contributing for the forest fires. And in fact, if we can look at the data that is provided by Uttarakhand Forest Department with respect to the forest fire related incidents, so far 598 incidents of forest fires took place. And this number is reported in last 6 months. In last 6 months, the state has seen around 598 forest fire incidents. And in fact, if you look at the impact of the forest fires, it is huge because it has affected around 724 hectares of forest land. And at the same time, 2 persons were injured so far. And at the same time, it has caused a loss of 14.99 lakh. So this is solely in Uttarakhand. However, apart from Uttarakhand, on this map, you can also clearly see there are different states across India and they are mostly vulnerable for these forest fires. So at least 23 of these incidents have actually reported in last 24 hours, affecting around 34 hectares of the forest land. And this is the vulnerability map of India to forest fires. Now, what is a forest fire? We have to understand the definition of a forest fire first. So actually, the forest fires are also known as wildfires. So you can use both of these terms synonymously. So the wildfires that spread uncontrollably, so and on their way they can burn plants, animals, grasslands and brushlands that fall in their path or on their way. And in fact, if you can look at these forest fire or wildfires, wind spreads the forest fire so rapidly and that could cause significant air pollution also, because when the fire has been taken place, the forest fire or the wildfire taken place, it releases a lot of emissions into the atmosphere and that could cause a significant air pollution as well. And in fact, these fires continue for long and are highly inflammable and cause climate changes as well, because the emissions which are being released by these forest fires could cause air pollution and also release the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and they could further cause the climate change that we wanted to combat. Now, what are the causes of the forest fires? We should briefly understand the causes also. So the causes of these forest fires include high atmospheric temperatures, because remember that this is the summer season and summer season is highly prone to the forest fires, or summer season actually contributes to the increasing intensity and frequency of these forest fires. So therefore, high atmospheric temperature along with the dryness such as a low humidity actually offers favorable circumstances. Okay, so these conditions actually offer favorable circumstances for a fire to start in certain forest regions. And apart from that, there are certain man-made causes also to these forest fires. So they include the fire caused when a source of fire like naked flame, cigarette, BD or electric spark or any other source of ignition comes in contact with the inflammable material in those forests during the summer seasons. And if you look at the intensity and the frequency of these forest fires, it is recorded that between November and January, the intensity and frequency of these forest fires is very high. Now, what is the impact of these forest fires on different stakeholders who are involved in this? So forest fires can actually impact the economy of those regions, because now if you can look at those forest areas, there are many families and the communities who depend on these forests for food, fiber, fodder, and fuel. So therefore, when these communities or these families dependent on forests, and forests are being degraded by these forest fires, their livelihoods would get impacted. The livelihood security of the people who are dependent on forests would also gets impacted. In fact, it could also burn down the small shrubs and grasses, and that could further contribute to the increasing intensity and frequency of landslides and soil erosion. Now, soil erosion is also a major problem that we have been facing, and soil erosion is one of the serious consequences of the deforestation. So because of increased soil erosion, we have been increasingly emphasized on afforestation methods, because the afforestation can hold together the soil and that could prevent the soil erosion. So when forest fires have been degrading the existing forests, then that could further intensify the soil erosion, and when there is a lesser forest cover, that could also increase the intensity and the frequency of landslides that have been taking place across the different regions. For example, if you look at the Western Ghats and the Eastern Himalayas, they are more prone to the landslides, and one such reason for the landslides is deforestation or a rapid spread of wildfires. And even in Northeast India, the people always cultivate or practice jhum cultivation or shifting cultivation. So as part of jhum cultivation, what those people do, they actually clear the forests, or they actually fire the local vegetation to clear the area for the cultivation of different crops, and that could further fuel soil erosion, and along with the soil erosion, that could also result in increasing intensity of the landslides. So therefore, these are some of the impact. And apart from that, burning down forests by these wildfires and forest fires actually cause a smoke and poisonous gas emissions. Now please remember, when forest fires are burnt, they release poisonous gases into the atmosphere, and when people inhale those gases, and it could be associated with several negative consequences on their health. And apart from that, they also releases harmful carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or that is, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and that could further increase the existing global warming potential. So here you can clearly understand that forest fires actually contribute to climate change through emissions. And at the same time, climate change is also responsible for the forest fires, because climate change actually increasing the global average temperatures, and increasing temperatures in a way result in forest fires. Now apart from that, the forest fires also have a lot of impacts. We have already understood those impacts. So biodiversity loss and biodiversity degradation is one such impact because of the forest fires, because when forest fire takes place, then a lot of plant and animal species would die, and that could reduce the species richness of that particular area, and even it impacts the biodiversity as well. And apart from that, it could associated with disasters such as soil erosion, increased intensity of the floods, frequency of the floods, and at the same time increased intensity of these landslides. So forest fires also contribute to the desertification, and at the same time we must focus on mitigation, rehabilitation, and restoration of those forest ecosystems, and that is very important to mitigate the negative impacts associated with forest fires. And loss of biodiversity and extinction of plant and animals is one such consequence because of the forest fires. So we can understand this in a very simple way. because when forest fires have been taking place, so they can kill the flora and fauna species which are living in those forests, and that could further drive the extinction of these plant and animal species. And it could also contribute to the loss of wildlife habitat and depletion of the wildlife as well. So loss of natural regeneration and reduction in forest cover are also the consequences associated. The forest fires are also associated with the global warming as well. Okay, so these are some of the consequences with the forest fires. So in this context, what should be the way forward, how we can mitigate these forest fires, and how we can adopt a large scale afforestation drives, and at the same time increase awareness among the people about these forest fires. So few things that we can must do. One is increased awareness generation and capacity building, because when forest fires have been taking place, the community participation and community engagement in dealing with those forest fires or preventing forest fires is very, very important. So we need to engage the community by providing them adequate awareness, and we should also build their capacities to deal with these forest fires, because the negative consequences that are being associated with the forest fires, because remember that these forest fires can affect the livelihoods of the families and the communities who are dependent on the forest, that we have understood earlier. So illegal activities and climate change are the negative consequences. So therefore the forest fires must be mitigated at any cost, and in fact the tourism must be eco-friendly, or ecotourism practices must be encouraged among the tourists, because responsible tourism would prevent any negative impact on the forests. So therefore we must promote the ecotourism practices, and at the same time the forest employees or forest officials actually play one of the leading role in preventing or mitigating these forest fires. So when we have provided them access to drones and other advanced technologies, they can efficiently detect these forest fires at an early stage, and thereby adopting appropriate measures to prevent the spread of these forest fires, and that could also have a lesser impact on the existing flora and fauna species. So therefore we must increase the capacities of the forest officials. We need to build their capacities, and after that we must plant the fire adapted tree species. So there are certain tree species, so they could resist the fire, or they could prevent the further spread of the fire, and that is actually a natural way of mitigating these forest fires. So we must cultivate those plant species in fire prone areas such as in northeast India, Uttarakhand, and also in central India. So there are some tips for the prevention of wildfires are given here, so you can go through all those tips and measures, and you can also incorporate these points in your mains answers for a better and more attractive answer. So the next important news article is with respect to the magnetic field. The oldest magnetic field of Earth has been discovered in a rock in Greenland. Now you'll understand about this. So the context is that the geologists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Oxford University, so they have found an ancient rocks in Greenland, and this ancient rock actually bear the oldest remnants of Earth's early magnetic field. So please understand, Earth's magnetic field actually plays a very important role in the sustenance of life on this planet, or the origin of life on this planet. And at the same time, the magnetic field of the Earth constantly changes every 1,000 years, because remember UPSC in 2018 asked about this magnetic field question. So this is also important for your examination perspective. So the geologists in Greenland, they found rocks which are about 3.7 billion years old, and they actually retain the signature of early magnetic field of the Earth. And in fact, the Earth's magnetic field was around few hundred million years earlier, and it could have played a very important, a very critical role in making the planet habitable. Now if you look at the solar system and all the planets in the solar system, Earth is one such planet which is located in the Goldilocks zone. So that is a habitable zone because it receives adequate sunlight to sustain the life on this planet. So that is known as Goldilocks zone, and at the same time this magnetic field actually plays a very important role in making planet Earth a habitable planet. And early in its evolution of the Earth, so it was able to foster life. Okay, so from a more simple species to a more complex species, so that is how the life on this planet has actually emerged or evolved. And early magnetic field has actually played a very important and a very crucial role in actually retaining or sustaining life on this planet by creating an atmosphere or environment. And at the same time, this particular magnetic field also played a very important role in shielding the planet from damage or damaging solar radiation. Because see, solar radiation, excessive amounts of solar radiation, the life would not may not be able to sustain on this planet, and oceans also would not form because of excess heat. But these magnetic fields actually forms a shield around the planet, and that could prevent the excessive solar radiation entering into the atmosphere, thereby maintaining a heat which is ideally suitable for the sustenance of life on this planet. However, the objective of the researchers finding out the rocks which have the signature of the oldest magnetic field, their total overall objective is to find rocks that still held the signatures of Earth's magnetic field when the rocks were first formed on this planet, and at the same time to get these rocks that were hopefully preserved and unaltered since their original deposition. Okay, so in fact these rocks provide a very important information about the inner layers of the Earth, the magnetic field of the Earth. So we have understood about the inner layers of Earth primarily through understanding and analyzing the rocks that were found on this planet, on the meteorites that hit the planet. Okay, so therefore through these rocks we will understand the early magnetic field of this planet. And in fact these rocks were found at Isuwa supercrystal belt in southwestern Greenland by the geologists. Okay, so if you look at this rock that were found by the geologists, so this is a rock type and that appears as a stripes of iron rich, silica rich rock. So this is how those rocks actually look like. And these rocks are originally formed in primordial oceans, and they're formed before the rise of oxygen in the atmosphere, before or around 2.5 billion years ago. And in fact Earth's magnetic field measures around 30 microtesla. So here, what is a microtesla? So microtesla is actually a unit of magnetic flux density of 10 lakh times smaller than the SI unit. So that is Tesla. And that is all about the rock found which has been revealing the facts about the early magnetic field of the planet Earth, and which plays a very important role in sustaining the life on this planet. So the next important news article is with respect to Nagaland. So it is in news because Nagaland to hold civic body polls after 20 years, and it also adds women's quota. Now please understand, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts passed by the Parliament in 1993 have actually established the local bodies at the panchayat level as well as the municipalities level. And in fact, Article 243 of the Indian Constitution deals with both panchayats and municipalities. So in fact, Article 243 has various different sub articles. So apart from that, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act has also provided for 33% of reservation for women in the local bodies. So however, so far Nagaland has not implemented the 33% of reservation clause for women, and that is the reason why the Nagaland has not yet conducted the elections to the local bodies with 33% of the quota for the women. Now we'll briefly understand this in a very detailed manner. So what is the context of this particular article? So the context is that Nagaland cabinet has approved the elections to the urban local bodies with 33% of the seats reserved for the women, that is being mandated by 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And in fact, please remember, reserving 33% of the seats for women is a mandatory clause under 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendments. So this is the first ever municipal elections conducted in a state, Nagaland, with quota for the women, or it has been providing quota for the women, the 33% quota for the women. And for this respect, the State Election Commission has approved the election schedule, and which specified the number of votes which are being reserved for women on rotation basis as mandated by the Nagaland Municipal Act 2023. So earlier, Nagaland Municipal and Town Council Act was passed in the year 2001 without the provisions of providing 33% of the reservation for women. So earlier act passed by the Nagaland state legislature has not provided 33% of the reservation for women, and in fact please understand the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments have actually mandated providing 33% of the reservation for the women. So therefore the earlier legislation which was passed in 2001 has no clause of or no provision of 33% of seats reserved for the women. So that is required under Article 243D of the Constitution, and this was amended in 2006. Okay, so please understand the Article 243 deals with the local bodies, and 243D specifically talks about providing 33% of reservation for the women in the local bodies. And this Article 243D, reservation of seats, not less than 1/3 of the seats must be reserved for the women under class 1 and women belonging to the scheduled caste, and as case may be scheduled tribes. So however, why Nagaland has not been implementing 33% of the reservation or 1/3 of the reservation for the women? So there is a reason for that. Under Article 371A, so this is a special article specifically for the state of Nagaland, right? So under Article 371A talks about some special provisions for the Nagaland. Okay, so this article has mentioned that any act of the parliament relating to the following matters would not apply to the Nagaland unless the state legislative assembly so decides. So what are those matters? Religious matters, social practices of Nagas. Okay, for example, imagine that Parliament of India has actually passed a legislation. Okay, so a parliament passed a legislation, and this particular legislation has actually infringing upon the religious matters and the social practices of Nagas. However, this particular legislation would not be directly applicable for the Nagaland because it has been infringing upon the religious and social practices of Nagas, and that is directly provided in the Article 371A. But however, the State Legislative Assembly of Nagaland can pass a legislation to ensure that this legislation of the Union Parliament can be applicable for the state as well. So because of that reason, Article 243T, so that is 1/3 of the seats reserved for the local bodies, reserved for the women in local bodies, is actually not provided by the Nagaland here. Okay, so the first election under the act was conducted in 2004. So earlier act, without reserving the seats for the women, because they deem that the union parliament, especially one third of the seats for the women under article 243t, has actually infringing upon the special provisions that are being granted to the Nagaland under 371A of the constitution. Okay, so this is the case. However, now Nagaland has been conducting elections after 20 years with one third of the seats which are being reserved for the women in the local bodies. And the next important news article is with respect to India and women ties, and why India has been seeking a trade deal, or India is planning to sign a trade deal with women to expand its ties with West Asia. Because remember, women is located in West Asia, and India's presence in West Asia, a woman is actually a very important link, or it plays a very important role. So what is the context? The context is that India and women will sign a trade deal in the coming months. So both these countries would ink a trade pact in the coming days. So you can see here, this is the location of woman, and woman is located in a very strategic position because the control over the Strait of Hormuz is very important, because it is one of the busiest shipping lines, and that has been connecting both Saudi Arabia and Iran. So New Delhi has actually seeks or planning to expand its ties in the West Asia, or presence in the West Asia, where relations in recent times the tensions have been significantly rising in West Asia, and that has been putting major shipping routes at risk. So these all regions are major shipping routes that are actually connecting the Indian Ocean with the Pacific Ocean, or they play a very important role in the larger Indo-Pacific region. And in fact, India has the central role in the Indo-Pacific region. So in this context, India further expanding its ties with Middle East or Central Asia is very, very important. And according to experts, India signing such a trade pact with women will further help India with a strategic partner such as women, and it will also access key trade routes in the volatile region. Right. So also remember that India requires energy security, and if this region continues to be volatile, then how can we ensure the energy security? So because of that reason, India also seeks to further extend or expand its presence in the West Asian region. Okay, so this West Asia's transit point for India, because understand the trade ties between India and women, the annual trade is less than 13 billion US dollars. So that is lesser than the potential of India and women. So therefore we have to gradually expand our bilateral trade with women, because woman is one of the a good partner for India. However, India's relation with this Gulf nation is very, very important, particularly in the context that it is a gateway to the narrow Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so this is Oman, and Oman is a Gulf nation, and this Gulf nation actually have a very important role in controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And Strait of Hormuz is actually one of the gateway to the busiest oil shipping routes, and that could ensure India with the energy security. And at the same time, so this Strait of Hormuz is located between Oman and Iran, and it is a major transit point for the global oil shipments, and that could potentially ensure India energy security in this volatile region. However, this particular trade deal actually requires the approval of the government that wins India's ongoing national elections. However, India has also been trying to have a trade deal with all the countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council, but those Gulf Cooperation Council are not yet signed a free trade agreement with India. But on the other hand, India has been exploring opportunities for the competitive advantage with individual countries within the Gulf Cooperation Council. So wherever we have the competitive advantage with respect to trade and commerce, for example, we have signed a free trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates, and gradually we will start inking those bilateral agreements, free trade agreements with all the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and that could potentially change the dynamics and the landscape of trade and commerce between India and all those Gulf countries. So this deal between India and Oman will also give a competitive advantage, because now this Gulf Cooperation Council is now negotiating a trade deal between Pakistan and China. Now Gulf Cooperation Council having a free trade agreement or trade deal with Pakistan and China would certainly harms the interests of India. However, India has been signing a free trade agreement with countries like UAE, and Oman would actually provide a competitive advantage against the Gulf Cooperation Council. So as part of this larger trade deal, certain duties would be eliminated on the goods which are being traded between both these countries. Now if you look at the major exports of India's major exports include agricultural products, gems, jewelry, leather, automobiles, medical devices, and engineering products, textiles. So these are all the major exports of India to any other country. So therefore, Oman has actually agreed to eliminate duties on Indian exports worth of $3 billion annually. And that is very important with respect to further boosting trade between India and Oman. And in reciprocity, what India has done, India has also agreed to reduce duties on some petrochemicals, so including aluminium, copper from Oman, while capping the imports of such important goods as well. So this is how India and Oman have actually agreed to reduce duties. So after that, what should be the way forward between India and Oman? So India does not have enough energy resources as of now to serve its current future energy requirements. See, understand that energy security for India is very, very important, but we do not have enough energy resources. So in India, the energy demand is also rapidly growing, rapidly expanding. And that has been a leading factor in for India looking for the long-term energy partnerships with countries like Oman. So we should build long-term energy partnerships with countries like Oman. And in fact, Oman's Dakm port, it is a strategically located port which is situated in the middle of international shipping lanes that connecting East and West Asia. And in fact, India's access to this Dakam port will also provide one of the strategic advantages with the other countries in the region. And it could also significantly increase India's presence in the Middle East. So India needs to engage with countries like Oman and also further take initiatives to utilize the existing opportunities which are arising from the Dakam port industrial city. However, lastly, India should also work closely with Oman to further enhance the strategic depth in the region and also add heft to its Indo-Pacific vision in western and southern part of Indian Ocean. Because remember, in Indo-Pacific region, India has the central role, and India also wanted to seek the greater engagement with the West Asia, Middle East, and it also wanted to increase its presence in the Middle East. So the next very important article is about how a candidate win elections unopposed. So recently in Surat, this has takes place. Now what is the context? The context is that the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party has actually won the Lok Sabha seat when one of its nominee of Surat constituency in the western state of Gujarat, his name is Mukesh Dalal, was elected unopposed. So before actually going for the polls, Mukesh Dalal from BJP has declared elected by the Election Commission. Now how it happens? So what are the provisions which are dealing with this particular thing? Okay, so because this has resulted in this was the consequence of rejection of the nominations filed by candidates from the Congress and also the substitute nominees, and their nominations were cancelled or rejected in the previous day, and other candidates have withdrawn their nomination papers. So all these factors have contributed to the election of a BJP candidate electing unopposed. For example, every constituency has a returning officer, and all the candidates who wanted to contest the Lok Sabha elections or general elections from that particular constituency, so they have to file nomination papers to the returning officer. So then the returning officer would scrutinize all the nominations submitted by the candidates, and if any candidate provide false information, malified information in their nominations, then the returning officer would cancel or reject their nominations. And in this case, it happens in Surat Lok Sabha constituency that the nominations of other parties were rejected by the returning officer because of the false details. And there were also other candidates who have actually filed nomination papers, but they have voluntarily withdrawn their nominations. Hence, only one single candidate nomination is valid after the deadline of filing nomination, hence he stands election. So there will be no need to conduct any election since only one candidate has filed a nomination from that particular constituency. And in fact, section 53(3) of the Representation of People Act 1951 actually deals with the procedure in uncontested elections like or similar to Surat Lok Sabha constituency. So according to the provisions of Representation of People Act, particularly section 53 clause 3, if the number of such candidates are actually less than the number of seats to be filled, then the returning officer shall forthwith declare all such candidates to be elected without conducting the election. And in fact, the returning officer's actions are actually governed by sections 33 of the Representation of the People Act, and this has actually pertains to the presentation of nomination papers and requirements of valid nomination. And in fact, Representation of People Act 1951 subsection 4 says that on the presentation of the nomination paper by any candidate, the returning officer shall satisfy himself or herself that the names and the electoral roll numbers of the candidates who have filed their nominations and their proposers entered in the nomination paper are same as those entered in the electoral rolls in order to make the existing nominations valid or accepted by the Election Commission. So if in any constituency there is only one contesting candidates or only one candidate filed a valid nomination, that candidate should be declared to have been duly elected immediately after the last hour of the withdrawal of candidature. So in that event, the poll is not necessary and there is no need to conduct any election because only one candidate left, and that could potentially mitigate the Election Commission's burden of conducting elections. So however, what about the negative voting in the election system? Because if you look at the EVMs along with the names of all the candidates who have been contesting elections, so there is also another option, that is none of the above or nota. So if you don't like the candidate which is nominated by a party, you can vote to a nota, none of the above, and your vote will be recorded as voted to nota. So this nota option was introduced by the Supreme Court or Supreme Court's intervention, and it is being available in the electronic voting machines since November 2013. And now this has become a reality in the wake of a recent verdict. Nota option is actually included in all the EVMs. However, the nota option actually gives the voter not to vote any candidate while protecting his right to privacy. is extremely important in a democracy, because in democracy the consent or the opinion of every individual, every voter is very very important, and such options such as nota gives every voter the right to express his disapproval for the candidates or for the political parties who have been contesting the elections. However, a section of activists and include the constitutional experts have been very often terming nota as a toothless tiger with no implications on the results. For example, in a constituency, 100 voters have filed, 100 voters actually voted. Okay, so however, out of 100 votes, one candidate gets 25 votes and nota option gets 75 votes. So even then also the candidate who have got 25 votes would stands elected. So that is the first past the post system, and because of that reason nota is termed as a toothless tiger with no implications on the results. Okay, so despite the fact that nota was reported to have netted 1.29 crore votes in the assembly elections and Lok Sabha elections in last 5 years, nota's votes are not taken into consideration by the Election Commission of India. And in fact, recently one petition was filed in the Supreme Court to direct Election Commission to hold a fresh polls in case majority of the votes polled by the electorate to nota. Okay, so in this case majority of the votes are polled to nota, so therefore a petition has been asking that the Election Commission must hold the re-election in this particular assembly constituency because nota has got majority of the votes. So therefore nota will not be a toothless tiger, and the political parties will be very careful while nominating candidates to different constituencies. Okay, because those candidates have a high disapproval rate from the people. So candidates who polled fewer votes than nota should stand debarred from contesting elections for 5 years. So these were some of the reforms that were proposed by the, not just reforms, but this is what the petition actually sought to direct by the Supreme Court to the Election Commission of India. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much, and we'll meet again with few more important news articles, and thank you so much. So please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.